The sky has always been a theatre of mystery, a vast and endless dome where the unexplainable drifts silently above human eyes. In the darkness, before cities learned to drown the heavens with their light, the stars told stories, the planets traced divine paths, and the sudden blaze of a comet was never neutral. It was an omen, a sword of fire, a messenger from realms no human could touch. Across continents, across millennia, civilizations raised their eyes and trembled. A streak of light tearing through the vault of night could signal the death of kings, the fall of empires, or the wrath of forgotten gods. Fear was not irrational. The sky was the ultimate calendar, and when it broke its patterns, humanity expected catastrophe. In Babylon, scribes etched cuneiform warnings about celestial wanderers. In China, court astronomers recorded fiery tales that presaged famine, dynastic collapse, or war. To the Maya, the sudden flare of a comet was woven into cosmic cycles of renewal and destruction. These beliefs, passed through whispered tradition, became woven into myth. A comet was not a passive visitor, but a harbinger. In every culture, it was more than ice and dust. It was meaning itself, descending uninvited into the human story. Now, imagine that those ancient flames in the sky were not merely the icy fragments of our own solar family. Imagine that, once in an age, something even stranger swept close to Earth, an interloper from the abyss between stars, glowing fiercely in its brief approach, before vanishing forever into the dark. What if the myths did not speak only of comets we know, but of travelers from elsewhere? What if the stories of dragons, fire-tailed gods, and shattered omens were echoes of a deeper truth, an interstellar truth that has only now begun to be revealed? For in recent years, our telescopes have unveiled such wanderers, messengers from other suns. And one of them, named 3I, Atlas, arrived with a story written not only in mathematics and physics, but in the ancient imagination of humankind. It came quietly, unnoticed at first, a pale traveler drifting through the void. Its name, clinical and spare 3I Atlas, belies the strangeness of its existence. It is not a comet born of our sun, not a familiar pilgrim from the frozen reaches of the Kuiper belt or the Oort cloud. This was an outsider, a fragment of somewhere else, a shard of matter from another star. In a universe where distances are cruel, where light itself takes years to cross the gulfs between suns, the arrival of such an object is a rare and shattering event. Discovered in 2019 by the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, Atlas, it was quickly recognized as something extraordinary. Astronomers calculated its trajectory and found it unbound by our sun's gravity. Its path was hyperbolic, a curve that could never close, never circle back. This was not one of ours, it was a messenger in transit. The 3I in its designation marked it as the third interstellar object ever confirmed, after the enigmatic Oumuamua and the fiery visitor 2I Borisov. But Atlas was different. For a brief time, it burned with a brightness that outshone its size. Its green glow, produced by cyanogen and diatomic carbon, haunted telescopic images. It seemed fragile, unstable, ready to break apart under the sun's heat. In April 2020, it did just that, fragmenting into pieces, vanishing from our skies as quickly as it had come. Yet, in those fleeting months, it stirred something older than astronomy itself. Its sudden flare, its swift death, seemed less like an equation and more like a myth reborn, a dragon igniting in the heavens, a god shattered before human eyes. The modern world watched it with detectors, CCD arrays, and orbital models, but the ancients would have watched with fear, their temples trembling under the same cold glow. Atlas was science now, but in memory it was mythology made real. It was the 28th of December 2019, when the faint signature of light first revealed itself. On the summit of Mauna Loa in Hawaii, the twin eyes of the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System scanned the heavens, searching not for beauty but for danger. Designed as an early warning network to detect asteroids on collision courses with Earth, Atlas became the instrument of revelation. The object it captured was faint, a blur against the tapestry of stars. To the software, it was just another candidate to be measured, tracked, and catalogued. But within hours, astronomers began to sense that this discovery would not be ordinary. At first, it was given a provisional designation, as all such detections are. Its orbit, still uncertain, was plotted and revised. Night after night, the data gathered. And then, through the painstaking work of orbital calculation, a shocking truth emerged. The eccentricity of its orbit was not close to 1, as would be expected for a long-period comet from the Oort cloud. Instead, it was well above 1, hyperbolic. Not of us, not from here. The astronomers who confirmed this must have felt the rare pulse of awe that only comes when the universe disrupts expectation. They had already seen Oumuamua in 2017, a dark, elongated shard tumbling through space, and I Borisov in 2019, a cometary interloper with a long tail. To detect a third so soon after seemed impossible. And yet, here it was, a green-tinged comet, brighter and more theatrical than its predecessors. Its discoverers, led by the Atlas project team, were not mythmakers or priests, but the inheritors of both. They stood in the same human tradition of gazing upward and asking, "What does this mean?" Only now they had tools of mathematics and optics, instruments to cut through mystery. Yet the feeling was the same as it had always been. In the glow of this foreign traveller, the modern and the ancient gaze converged. To call an object interstellar is to give it an identity that shatters our sense of belonging. Almost every rock, comet, and fragment we know orbits the Sun, tied to it by gravity, drawn forever into its dominion. Even those that stretch far into the Oort cloud are still members of our solar family, bound by invisible chains of mass and distance. But 3I Atlas was not bound. Its orbit was not a closed ellipse, but an open wound in geometry, a hyperbola. This curve, when traced against the night, told a story of origin and exile. Why is this extraordinary? Because the cosmos is vast, and crossing its distances is rare beyond comprehension. Between stars there is only emptiness, the occasional dust grain, the wandering photon. A comet like Atlas had travelled light years, perhaps tens or hundreds, before our gravity caught it for a moment. Its speed was its confession. At nearly 30 kilometers per second relative to the Sun, it could not have been slowed enough to remain. It was simply passing through. For astronomers, such a discovery is like finding a message in a bottle drifting on an endless ocean. The chemistry of the comet holds the fingerprints of another star's nursery. The trajectory is the line of a story written outside our own chapter of creation. In Atlas, there was proof that planetary systems are not sealed kingdoms. They scatter their fragments, and some of those fragments wander, crossing gulfs until chance delivers them to alien skies. In human history, comets were terrifying because they broke the pattern of the heavens. They were outsiders to the regular dance of the planets and stars. In science, Atlas was terrifying for the same reason it did not belong. It was a reminder that the universe is not only larger than we imagined, but more porous, more interconnected, more unpredictable. The very fact of its existence challenged our notion of cosmic order. Long before telescopes, before mathematics traced the laws of celestial motion, there were human eyes lifted to the night. They saw in the sky both permanence and betrayal. Stars were steady, predictable in their risings and settings, as if carved into the firmament. Planets moved with order, their wanderings slow, deliberate, meaningful. But comets were the dissonance. They appeared unannounced, burned with unsettling intensity, and then vanished, leaving silence and fear behind. For early civilizations, this unpredictability was intolerable. The sky was supposed to be the language of the gods, a canvas of divine intentions. To see it disrupted by a sudden fiery visitor was to believe that heaven itself had spoken. In Babylon, the keepers of the night recorded omens in clay, attaching cometary appearances to the fate of kings and battles. In Egypt, priests tied the sky's upheaval to the balance of Ma'at, believing the cosmos had tilted. In Rome, the death of Julius Caesar was said to be marked by a blazing star, interpreted as his soul ascending. The ancients bore the burden of the unknown. Without telescopes or orbital dynamics, they made sense of comets through metaphor and myth. Each culture spun its own tale, but the emotional core was the same: fear, awe, a sense that the universe had crossed some invisible boundary. To the Maya, comets were woven into cycles of renewal, harbingers of both death and rebirth. In China, they were called guest stars, reminders that harmony between heaven and earth had been disturbed. It is easy, from a modern vantage, to dismiss these myths as superstition, yet beneath them lies an instinctive recognition. Comets were different. They were intruders in the cosmic order. And if three Atlas had blazed across their skies, would they not have woven it into their prophecies, their stories, their fears? For the burden of ancient sky watchers was to face the inexplicable with only the fragile tools of belief. To see a comet is to witness fire set loose in the heavens. Across cultures, the image of this sudden flame took on the shapes of gods and monsters. In Greece, Aristotle described comets as fiery exhalations of the earth, a dangerous breath released into the upper sky. To the Romans, they were swords unsheathed, celestial blades flashing above a world about to be cut open by war. In the myths of the Norse, fiery serpents streaking through the firmament foreshadowed Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. China's astronomers named them broom stars, sweeping disorder across the harmony of heaven. Their tails were seen as cosmic whips, instruments of punishment wielded by unseen forces. In India, texts spoke of comets as Ketus, severed heads of demons wandering endlessly, their trails dripping poison across the night. Polynesian tales cast them as torches carried by wandering spirits, omens of famine, pestilence, or upheaval. And always the tail was the terror. A comet's tail seemed alive, stretching, twisting, burning as though infused with intent. This was no passive wanderer but a messenger, an emissary of chaos. To watch it grow longer night by night was to feel that doom itself was drawing nearer. Many civilizations linked these fiery visitors to catastrophe, floods, earthquakes, the deaths of rulers. To the Mayans, the serpent-like forms in the sky were entwined with cycles of destruction and renewal, suggesting that comets carried the blueprint of apocalypse and rebirth. It was not foolishness but poetry born of fear. Without understanding sublimation of ice or solar radiation pressure, the ancients imagined comets as divine portents. And in their metaphors, dragons, swords, demons, we glimpse something universal. Humanity's attempt to grasp the intrusion of the unfamiliar. To stand under such a vision was to feel the cosmos speak, unbidden and urgent. And in that fire-tailed messenger, myth was not exaggeration but survival, a way to name the terror that streaked across the stars. When astronomers traced the faint light of 3I Atlas across the sky, they uncovered the truth of its trajectory. This was not a familiar ellipse, the loyal loop of a comet bound to our sun's dominion. It was a hyperbolic path, the mathematics of departure. The shape of its orbit alone revealed its secret. Atlas did not belong here. It was a visitor, arriving with too much velocity to be captured, destined to leave us forever. In orbital mechanics, the eccentricity of a path tells its story. For a perfect circle, it is 0, for an ellipse, less than 1. But when the eccentricity exceeds 1, the curve opens wide, never to close. Atlas had such an orbit, a declaration that it came from beyond. Its journey had carried it across the interstellar gulf, slipping between the stars until chance brought it near the Sunday. The sheer improbability of such an arrival was staggering. Most comets we know belong to our system's own icy reserves, the Kuiper belt and the Oort cloud. They swing inward on predictable, though often millennia-long returns. But Atlas was unbound. It would never return. The implications were immense. To trace its path backward was to see it threading through the void, its origin lost in the anonymity of deep space. Perhaps it was ejected billions of years ago from another planetary system, flung out by the gravitational shove of a giant world. Perhaps it was the shattered fragment of a long-dead moon, now condemned to drift between suns. Whatever its story, its presence here was a message written in motion. Stars are not isolated. Their debris mingles, their fragments trespass into alien skies. For humanity, watching Atlas curve past our sun was to glimpse the dynamic, open universe our ancestors only imagined. A cosmos where strangers can appear, burning briefly, then vanish beyond the reach of memory. Numbers rarely inspire fear, yet the mathematics of 3I Atlas did exactly that. Once its orbit was pinned down with precision, astronomers saw the proof encoded in figures that could not be argued with. The eccentricity of its path was measured at greater than 1, an orbital shape forever unbound. Its velocity relative to the Sun exceeded the escape velocity of the solar system. The equations whispered a truth more haunting than any myth. This comet did not belong to our world, and never would. It is easy to forget how radical this is. For centuries, every comet ever seen by human eyes was assumed to be a child of the Sun, pulled from the Oort cloud or Kuiper belt, born in the cold peripheries of our system. Each one might take thousands, even millions of years to return. But return it would. Atlas, by contrast, had no return. Its destiny was departure. After grazing near our star, it would vanish into interstellar space, never to circle back, never to reappear in another age. The numbers also revealed its fragility. Its brightness curve suggested it was larger than it truly was, an illusion created by volatile gases boiling away in excess. Within weeks of its detection, astronomers suspected its nucleus was unstable, perhaps only a few hundred meters across, weakened by internal fractures. That suspicion proved correct when the comet broke apart in April 2020, scattering into fragments too faint to track. A story written in light collapsed into silence. For the ancients, a comet's sudden disappearance would have been terrifying, a god that died mid-sky. For modern astronomers, the collapse was both expected and tragic, a reminder that cosmic visitors do not linger for human comfort. And in the precision of orbital mathematics, the shock remained. The equations left no doubt. Atlas was a trespasser, and its story here would always be brief. Its sudden blaze was almost theatrical. In early 2020, as Atlas drew closer to the Sun, it brightened with startling speed. Predictions suggested it might even become visible to the naked eye, a green star with a tail of fire haunting the northern skies. For a brief, electric moment, astronomers imagined a spectacle to rival the greatest comets in human memory. The night sky seemed to promise a vision that would echo those that once terrified Babylonian priests and Chinese emperors alike. The flare of Atlas was not only scientific, it was symbolic. To modern eyes, it was the chemistry of cyanogen and carbon compounds fluorescing under solar radiation. But to ancient eyes, had they witnessed it, it would have been an omen. A star swelling unnaturally, growing brighter with each night, could only be read as a sign. In Babylon, such a star might have heralded the fall of empires. In Greece, it might have been Zeus's fiery wrath. To the Norse, it would have been the serpent Jörmungandr uncoiling across the sky. And then, just as swiftly, came its fragility. The brightening was not the herald of endurance, but of collapse. The comet fractured under solar heat, its brilliance the prelude to its breaking. By April, telescopes recorded not one nucleus but a scattering of shards. Its sudden death was as dramatic as its rise, echoing the myths of fallen gods whose glory was brief, whose fire was unsustainable. In that cycle's sudden appearance, terrifying growth, and shattering demise, Atlas embodied the ancient narratives. To human beings who once told stories by firelight, this would have been apocalypse and miracle entwined, the sky flaring with unnatural brilliance, then extinguished in silence. Even to modern science, there was something uncanny in the symmetry. Numbers could explain it, but awe remained. Atlas became a comet of recognition, a modern event that seemed to wear the mask of ancient myth. The mystery of Atlas did not end with its path or its glow, it deepened in its breaking. As the comet drew closer to the sun, astronomers watched with growing unease. Its brightening had been excessive, disproportionate to its size, a warning sign that the nucleus was unstable. Then, under the heat of spring 2020, it happened. The comet fractured. What had once been a single traveler became a swarm of fragments, each piece dissolving into dust and vapor, until the visitor was no longer a comet, but a scattering of fading trails. Why this fragility? Comets are fragile by nature, mixtures of dust and frozen volatiles, remnants of planetary birth. But Atlas seemed particularly delicate. Its breakup was sudden, violent, almost symbolic. The ancient imagination would have seen in it the death of a god, the shattering of a divine messenger mid-journey. Myths across the world speak of celestial beings torn apart. Osiris dismembered and scattered, the Norse wolf Fenrir ripping the sky asunder, the Aztec gods sacrificing themselves in bursts of fire. Atlas mirrored such stories, collapsing not at the end of its arc but in its very moment of revelation. In truth, the science was simple. Solar radiation heated its icy body unevenly, fractures widened, pressures built, and the fragile nucleus failed. Yet the spectacle resonated with something far older than physics. Here was a celestial sign that blazed, promised, and then betrayed. To those who first charted comets in antiquity, this vanishing act would have been devastating, confirming their fears that the heavens themselves were fickle and violent. The disintegration left behind no monument, only data and memory. And in that, Atlas became more myth than comet, a celestial figure whose story was brief, whose drama unfolded in fire and fracture, leaving humanity once more with unanswered questions, half-illuminated truths, and the silence of vanished gods. Clay tablets still whisper of omens carved in wedge-shaped script, the voice of Babylon reaching across time. To the people of Mesopotamia, the night sky was not backdrop but scripture, a divine ledger where gods inscribed their will. Comets, sudden and unpatterned, were among the most dreaded signs. They were not steady like the planets, not eternal like the stars. They were intrusions, fiery stains that tore across the heavens, marking the fragile order of life below. One Omen text, preserved from the first millennium BCE, describes a torch star blazing in the east, foretelling famine and rebellion. Another links the sight of a tailed star to the death of rulers, as if celestial fire had reached down to extinguish human thrones. In Greece, centuries later, Aristotle puzzled over comets, yet still treated them as aberrations, fiery vapors that defied the harmony of celestial spheres. To the Stoics, they were divine portents, woven into the logic of fate. And so, when Atlas brightened suddenly and fractured into pieces, its drama echoed the oldest stories. The Babylonians would have called it the fall of kings. The Greeks might have named it a god struck down, a temporary star undone by divine will. The myth of Phaethon, who seized the chariot of the sun only to be destroyed by its fire, seems almost a metaphor for Atlas, an interloper who came too close, burned too brightly, and shattered in ruin. Even the name it carries today, Atlas, links it to Greek memory. Atlas was the titan condemned to hold up the sky itself, a figure of cosmic burden and eternal exile. How strange that this comet, carrying the name of a mythic exile, was itself a fragment wandering the stars, bound to no system, destined to collapse in our gaze. In its fall, one can hear the echo of both Babylon and Greece, a sky that warns, a myth reborn. Far to the east, in the courts of emperors and dynasties, comets were treated with the seriousness of an empire's fate. Chinese astronomers, disciplined recorders of the sky for more than 2,000 years, catalogued these fiery visitors with meticulous care. They called them Hui Xing, broom stars, their sweeping tails imagined as celestial brushes scouring away order. Each appearance was dutifully logged in the imperial archives, paired with events on Earth, famine, uprising, or the death of an emperor. One Han Dynasty record describes a long-tailed star that swept across the heavens like a dragon, its form winding and coiling above terrified witnesses. Another compares the glow of a comet to a torch carried into the night sky, illuminating destruction to come. For the court, these were not curiosities, they were mandates from heaven itself. The mandate of heaven, the principle that granted emperors divine legitimacy, was fragile. A comet tearing across the sky could be read as heaven's disapproval, a warning that the dynasty's order was collapsing. In this, the language of dragons dominated. Chinese myth imagined serpentine beasts inhabiting the heavens, creatures of power and change. A comet's twisting, luminous tail seemed nothing less than a dragon unfurling in fire. It is tempting to imagine 3-eye Atlas, with its sudden brightening and green glow, as such a vision. Had it appeared in those centuries, court astronomers might have described it as a jade dragon coiling above the earth, a beast born not of this realm but of cosmic chaos. When Atlas fractured, scattering its body into fragments, the echo would have been unmistakable. A dragon slain in mid-flight, its body broken into pieces across the heavens. For Chinese myth, it would have been a warning of turbulence, of a world swept into disorder. For modern eyes, it was physics and sublimation. Yet, in the symmetry of image, the myth of dragons and the science of comets entwine seamlessly. Beyond empires and written chronicles, memory of fiery sky beings lived in the songs and stories of indigenous peoples. In Australia, Aboriginal traditions speak of sky serpents and fiery stars that marked endings and beginnings, their trails stretching like burning rivers across the dark. In North America, some tribes carried tales of sky arrows, blazing visitors that pierced the heavens and warned of coming famine. The Inuit of the Arctic told of spirits descending as streaks of fire, shaping the world with both creation and destruction. These were not myths isolated from observation. Oral traditions, carried faithfully for generations, often preserved echoes of real celestial events. A sudden comet, flaring brighter each night before vanishing, would leave an imprint too deep to fade. In Polynesian navigation chants, comets were woven into the lore of the ocean, sometimes as guiding flames, sometimes as omens of danger. In the Andes, Incan stories described comets as tears of the sun, flames that fell when balance was disturbed. Consider how 3-eye Atlas, with its uncanny glow and swift demise, might have been remembered in such traditions. A visitor with no return, a fire that rose in promise, then broke into fragments, leaving only fading trails. To cultures that saw continuity between Earth and sky, such a spectacle would not have been an astronomical curiosity. It would have been woven into identity, into the rhythm of story and survival. Modern anthropologists sometimes dismiss comet myths as poetic exaggeration, yet they often preserve patterns of truth: floods after impact events, crop failures after dust, filled skies, strange lights that came and went without explanation. If an interstellar comet like Atlas had passed before them, those same people would have named it, feared it, and sung of it, binding its brief fire to human memory. And though science now explains the chemistry of its glow and the fragility of its nucleus, the resonance remains, an ancient memory of sky fires that shape both cosmos and culture. Modern eyes did not watch Atlas with fear of divine punishment, but with instruments built to pull secrets from the faintest light. The Hubble Space Telescope turned its mirrors toward the comet as it began to fracture, capturing images of shards drifting apart, each fragment trailed by luminous vapor. What ancient observers might have called a god dying in the sky, Hubble rendered as a delicate disassembly, pieces glowing against the dark. Other observatories joined the vigil. Pan-STARRS, with its wide-field survey cameras, monitored the comet's path, plotting the arc of its hyperbolic escape. The Subaru telescope and ground-based spectrographs examined its spectrum, teasing out the chemical signatures that painted its glow: cyanogen, carbon dimers, dust grains, scattering sunlight. These data revealed a comet composed of fragile materials, built in the cold, then unmade by the sun's heat. Yet even with this precision, mystery remained. Why had Atlas brightened so rapidly, almost theatrically, before breaking apart? Some speculated that volatile pockets deep inside its nucleus had erupted, creating jets of gas that made it seem larger, more luminous than its size warranted. Others suggested that tidal forces, as it neared the sun, may have torn open fractures already waiting to fail. In these questions, one sees the echo of ancient anxieties. The Babylonians asked what such a flare meant for kings. Chinese astronomers asked what it meant for dynasties. Modern astronomers asked what it meant for physics. Different languages, different tools, but the same posture: humans gazing upward, confronting the unknown. Atlas was no longer a story told around fires, but a sequence of datasets, pixels, and equations. Yet the awe it inspired was not diminished. Instruments gave us detail, but detail did not erase the sense of trespass, of a visitor arriving from beyond comprehension. The mystery persisted, clothed now in science, yet still haunting, still unresolved. Among the greatest revelations of an interstellar comet lies not only in its orbit but in its substance. Every comet carries within it the frozen chemistry of its birthplace, a capsule of the environment in which it was born. For comets native to our system, that means the sun's nursery icy grains forged in the circumstellar disk that once swirled around our young star. But Atlas was different. Its atoms, its isotopes, its volatile ices were the remnants of another star's beginnings. It was, quite literally, matter from elsewhere. Astronomers who studied its spectrum detected the usual suspects: water, ice, carbon-bearing molecules, cyanogen. Yet subtle variations hinted at differences. The ratios of isotopes, such as deuterium to hydrogen, hold clues to the star system that forged them. In our own comets, these ratios vary but often trace back to conditions within our solar nebula. If Atlas carried different proportions, it meant it was born under another star's light, where temperatures, densities, and radiation fields shaped matter differently. Though precise measurements proved difficult, the very fact that such information could be carried across light years was staggering. Consider what that implies. Atlas may have formed billions of years ago in the dusty outskirts of a distant star, alongside planets that rose and perhaps fell. At some moment in that system's history, gravitational tides or planetary migrations flung it outward, ejecting it into interstellar exile. For eons, it drifted through the galaxy, untouched, until it crossed our path. In its green glow was the fingerprint of a foreign sun, a chemical memory of another world's dawn. The ancients could never have imagined such detail, but they intuited the truth. These visitors were not of us. To them, they were gods or dragons. To us, they are fragments of alien creation. And yet the resonance is the same. Atlas was not merely a comet, it was a shard of another beginning, a messenger from a forgotten forge of stars. Atlas was not alone in its trespass. Before it, in 2017, Oumuamua had startled the world. Unlike any comet known, it appeared elongated, tumbling through space like a fragment of something shattered. It showed no bright coma, no tail, and yet it accelerated as though pushed by unseen forces. Oumuamua's strangeness spawned speculation that ranged from exotic ices to alien technology, its very name in Hawaiian, a messenger from afar arriving first, hinting at its uncanny nature. 2 years later came 2I Borisov, discovered by an amateur astronomer in Crimea. Unlike Oumuamua, Borisov looked more familiar, a comet with a distinct tail, shedding gas and dust as it approached the Sunday. But its orbit, too, was hyperbolic, confirming that it had crossed the interstellar gulf. It was the first interstellar comet clearly behaving like those of our own system, and it proved that the galaxy is rich with such fragments. Then came Atlas, the third interstellar object confirmed, and the second comet. Its appearance so soon after the others was itself a revelation. For centuries, humanity had known only of comets born from our own sun's icy reserves. Now, within 3 years, 3 visitors had arrived from other suns. The coincidence suggested something profound. Interstellar wanderers may be far more common than we imagined, their silent drifts threading constantly through the galaxy. Each arrival deepened the mystery. Oumuamua, with its shape and unexplained motion, Borisov, with its chemistry that seemed both alien and familiar, and Atlas, burning bright before breaking apart, a dragon of ice undone in mid-flight. Together they formed a pattern, a chorus of strangeness. The ancients would have called it an age of omens, a cascade of portents. To science, it was the dawning of a new field, interstellar astronomy, the study of wanderers born under other stars. Yet both traditions shared the same unease. These objects arrive unannounced, stay briefly, and leave us with more questions than answers. Coincidence or continuity? The question lingers like a shadow over the trail of 3I Atlas. Could the myths of fiery dragons, shattered gods, and serpent stars be echoes of encounters not with local comets alone, but with visitors from other suns? For thousands of years, human beings have spun stories around what they saw in the sky. Yet memory is not always imagination. Oral traditions have preserved the memory of volcanic eruptions, of tsunamis, of meteor impacts across centuries. Why not interstellar comets? Consider the fragments of story, the Babylonian torch stars that arrive suddenly, blaze and vanish, the Chinese guest stars that sweep their tails across heaven, the Norse prophecy of a world-ending serpent rising from the sea of stars. Each carries an uncanny resemblance to the real spectacle of Atlas: sudden appearance, unnatural brightness, and a body that fractures into ruin. Myth may distort, but it does not always invent. The recurrence of comet omens across cultures suggests a continuity of human experience. Again and again, in every corner of the globe, these fiery visitors have been tied to apocalypse, to kings falling, to cycles ending. Were all of these memories born from local comets, our own Oort cloud sending emissaries inward? Or did some rare myths preserve the imprint of something rarer still, interstellar fragments, like Atlas, whose arrival was so uncanny that they became unforgettable? Modern science hesitates here, as it must. There is no proof that ancient myths speak of interstellar wanderers, but the resonance is strong. When Atlas appeared and broke apart, the narrative it seemed to embody was not foreign to us. It was already written in human memory. Perhaps coincidence? Perhaps continuity? Perhaps both. The truth is that the human mind, when faced with a fire in the sky, reaches instinctively for meaning. Whether comet or trespasser, myth or mathematics, the story becomes one. Comets have always been two-faced destroyers and givers, harbingers of death and bringers of life. Science confirms what myth intuited. These icy bodies are relics of planetary formation, frozen vaults of water, carbon, and organic molecules. When they strike worlds, they can end eras. 66 million years ago, an object of cometary or asteroidal nature struck Earth and ended the reign of the dinosaurs, turning forests to ash and seas to acid. Yet comets may also have delivered the very ingredients of life, seeding the early Earth with water and complex carbon compounds, the raw chemistry of biology. 3I Atlas carried both possibilities within its fragile body. Its cyanogen glow reminded us of comets' toxic associations. The ancient fear that their tails poisoned the air was not entirely unfounded, though exaggerated. At the same time, its ices contained the gift of water, the same element that might have filled our oceans when Earth was young. A single fragment of Atlas, had it collided with a planet, could have been either doom or genesis, depending on where it fell and what it brought. The myths captured this duality. To the Maya, comets were woven into cycles of destruction and renewal. In Hindu cosmology, the severed demon head Ketu represented both calamity and cosmic balance. In Norse sagas, fiery serpents signaled Ragnarok, the end of the gods, but Ragnarok also carried within it the promise of a new world reborn. Humanity has always sensed this paradox. In the fire that falls from the heavens, there is both terror and creation. Atlas, in breaking apart before our eyes, embodied that ambiguity. It did not strike us, did not deliver water or destruction, but reminded us of the fragility of such boundaries. It could have been a destroyer. It could have been a giver. Instead, it was a story, one that wove together science and myth, reminding us that in every comet lies both the shadow of extinction and the seed of life. The unraveling of Atlas left behind not clarity but unease. For a brief season it had been a beacon, a luminous intruder traced by telescopes across the dark. Its promise of brilliance stirred both astronomers and skywatchers, until it betrayed that promise by disintegrating into dust. What lingered was not spectacle but questions: why had it failed so quickly? Why had it grown so bright only to collapse? Its disintegration was not unusual in the mechanics of comets. Fragile by nature, these icy nuclei are bundles of fractures, ancient rubble weakly held together. Yet Atlas seemed to exaggerate that fragility. Its brightness curve suggested sudden eruptions, as if internal pressures had burst forth uncontrollably. Some astronomers speculated that the comet might have been a loose aggregate, never tightly compacted, doomed to fall apart under modest solar heating. Others wondered if tidal stresses, subtle but persistent, had teased open fissures already present from its formation. And yet, the very ordinariness of the physics did not ease the discomfort. Here was a comet that had traveled perhaps millions of years through interstellar space, surviving the cold, the radiation, the emptiness, only to unravel within sight of us. It had crossed the abyss, only to die under our Sunday. There was something haunting in that timing, as if it were never meant to reveal its full story. For ancient peoples, such a vanishing act would have been terror. A star that grew brighter each night, then suddenly extinguished, would confirm the darkest omens. For modern science, it was frustration. The closer we came to study its nucleus, the more it denied us. Atlas's end left only fragments too faint to analyze in depth, dissolving into invisibility. The mystery deepened, not because we lacked equations, but because its story ended mid-sentence. The comet's silence was itself a message that the cosmos reveals and conceals on its own terms. Numbers are precise, yet they often feel like riddles. When astronomers mapped the orbit of 3I Atlas, they spoke in the language of eccentricity, perihelion distance, inclination. Each figure carried meaning, but together they described something uncanny. The comet's hyperbolic path meant exile, its velocity meant freedom, its brief flare meant instability. To scientists, this was data. To earlier ages, the same observations would have been prophecy. Consider the Babylonians, who carved omen tablets linking the appearance of a fiery star with the fate of rulers. They did not calculate eccentricity, they calculated destiny. A sudden increase in brightness was not sublimation of volatiles, but the rising anger of the gods. A comet's curve across the constellations was not an orbital arc, but a message traced against the canvas of heaven. In Greece, philosophers attempted explanations within their cosmology. Aristotle imagined comets as exhalations, fiery vapors that broke the harmony of the spheres. His mathematics was wrong, but his instinct that comets were cosmic disruptions was not. The parallel is striking. Modern orbital dynamics tells us Atlas was an intruder, a fragment hurled from another system. Ancient myth told us comets were omens, sent from realms beyond human reach. Both traditions treat comets as outsiders. Both sense in them a break from continuity. To stand at the boundary of myth and science is to see reflection. The ancients, with their metaphors, and modern physicists, with their equations, are engaged in the same struggle to draw meaning from the fire in the sky. The mathematics of orbital mechanics may replace the language of prophecy, but the awe it describes is the same. Atlas's path, traced with precision, is still a riddle, a curve that tells of beginnings elsewhere, of exile, of a destiny not bound to us. Myth called it an omen. Science calls it a hyperbolic trajectory. Both call it strange. When Einstein reshaped our understanding of the cosmos, he did not erase the wonder of comets, he deepened it. His theory of general relativity revealed space not as a passive stage, but as a fabric, curved and warped by mass. Comets, those fragile wanderers of ice and dust, travel not across empty void, but along the bent contours of space-time itself. Their arcs are not merely random trails, they are responses to the invisible geometry of the universe. For Atlas, this meant its hyperbolic path was not only mathematics, but testimony. It revealed that the comet had been flung from another gravitational well, another star's curved dominion. Somewhere in the past, perhaps in the tug-of-war between a giant planet and its sun, Atlas was given escape velocity. It slipped free, not into chaos, but into the larger fabric where every star's gravity leaves its subtle fingerprint. Its journey through the galaxy was a slow dance across curved surfaces of space-time, like a moat drifting across ripples in a vast, unseen sea. Einstein himself once reflected on the harmony between the cosmic and the mysterious. Though he distrusted superstition, he recognized that the human mind encounters awe at the boundary of comprehension. A comet like Atlas would have been, for him, a perfect symbol, a fragment obeying the cold equations of relativity, yet stirring the same ancient emotions that myths had described for millennia. In its green glow and ultimate fracture, one can glimpse the paradox. Einstein cherished the universe as both knowable and unknowable. The mathematics of geodesics explain the path, but not the meaning. The mythmakers of Babylon or China could not have spoken of space-time, but they felt its mystery when they saw the heavens disrupted. In Atlas, Einstein's sky and their sky are the same, a place where wandering bodies reveal the deeper architecture of the cosmos, and where awe remains untouched by understanding. Stephen Hawking often reminded us that the universe is fragile, balanced on the edge of forces we only partly understand. Black holes, entropy, the evaporation of matter into radiation. His work illuminated the impermanence written into the fabric of reality. In that light, Atlas seemed a small but poignant echo, a body that traveled for millions of years across interstellar space, only to disintegrate in a brief blaze when it brushed too near the Sunday. Its existence was endurance, its end was inevitability. Hawking spoke often of cosmic fragility, the idea that the vacuum of space itself might be unstable, that a sudden quantum fluctuation could unravel the universe in an instant. Against such a backdrop, the fate of Atlas was a miniature parable. A structure that survived the harshest cold and longest voyage still collapsed under a shift in conditions. The comet's breakup was not cosmic apocalypse, yet it resonated with the theme Hawking returned to. Nothing is permanent, not even the stars, not even the laws that bind them. Ancient myths understood this fragility in their own language. In the Norse sagas, Ragnarok was not only destruction, but the inevitable decay of divine order. In Egyptian lore, the sun god Ra fought nightly against Apophis, the serpent of chaos, barely staving off collapse. These stories carried the same intuition Hawking placed into equations, that order is fleeting and that chaos waits at the threshold. Atlas was a fragment of that truth, a celestial traveler, undone by entropy, by heat, by stress, by the endless slide toward disorder. It arrived as a messenger of survival, endured for ages uncounted, then shattered before human eyes. To see it die was to glimpse Hawking's universe made tangible, fragile, impermanent, yet filled with moments of incandescent wonder. In its breaking, the comet reminded us that nothing, not even the wanderers between stars, is immune to the quiet, inevitable reach of entropy. The question that lingered after Atlas broke apart was as old as myth itself. Where did it come from? For comets native to our solar system, the answer lies in icy reservoirs, the Kuiper belt, or the Oort cloud, distant shells of frozen debris sculpted by the sun's gravity. But for an interstellar comet, the birthplace is a mystery beyond maps. Somewhere, perhaps hundreds of light years away, a planetary system shed a fragment. Somewhere, a collision or gravitational upheaval exiled a piece of creation into the endless dark. One theory imagines Atlas as debris from a rogue planet, a body ejected in the early chaos of planetary migration. Giant worlds, shifting their orbits, could have tossed smaller companions outward, scattering moons, asteroids, and icy fragments into the galaxy. Another vision places Atlas as the remnant of a shattered moon, torn apart by tidal stresses near its parent world, hurled free in the aftermath. Or perhaps it was born in the frozen outskirts of an alien star system, a sibling to comets we would recognize, but forever separated from its family. Its fragility suggests a long exile. Eons of cosmic radiation may have weakened its structure, cracking its ices, rendering it brittle. Its green glow hinted at chemistry shaped in a different stellar nursery, a place where temperatures and radiation sculpted matter unlike our own. In its spectral fingerprint, there may have been the story of another sun's birth, another world's loss. Ancient myths, too, asked origins. Was the fiery visitor the weapon of a god, the breath of a dragon, the spirit of a fallen ancestor? They sought meaning where science now seeks mechanism. Yet both recognize the same truth. Comets are wanderers, born of violence and cast adrift. Atlas was no exception. Its journey was the story of exile, a fragment unmoored, carrying with it the silence of worlds we will never know. There is a strangeness in Atlas's death that tempts the mind toward deeper speculation. Classical physics tells us why comets fracture sublimation of ices, internal stresses, tidal forces, yet its sudden brightness and fragile collapse invited whispers of something subtler, something that might reside in the quantum fabric itself. Could the instability of Atlas have been written into its particles, the result of processes at scales smaller than atoms, older than stars? In quantum theory, matter is never still. Particles flicker with uncertainty, fields ripple invisibly through space. A comet nucleus is not a solid stone, but a loose matrix of dust and volatile molecules, held together by fragile bonds. In the cold of interstellar space, those bonds may have endured for eons, preserved by near absolute zero. But as Atlas approached the Sun, quantum agitation within its molecular structure could have magnified into cracks, a chain reaction of weakness triggered by subtle fluctuations. Its luminous flare might not simply have been chemical release, but the chorus of quantum processes amplified on a cosmic stage. Some physicists speculate that interstellar bodies may carry exotic isotopes, atoms forged in the extremes of supernovae or ancient stellar furnaces. If so, Atlas might have contained materials alien to our solar chemistry atoms, whose decay or reactivity introduced instability unseen in our native comets. Could quantum fragility, written into its alien dust, have predetermined its brief brilliance and rapid demise? To the ancients, such ideas would have been indistinguishable from myth. They spoke of divine fire, of stars whose hearts broke open, of dragons collapsing mid-flight. In their metaphors was the same intuition that some visitors from the sky are too unstable to last, too strange to endure. Modern science translates that intuition into the language of quantum fields and isotopes, yet the resonance is the same. Atlas was not only a comet undone by sunlight, it was a reminder that the universe is unstable at every scale, from the quantum to the cosmic. Why do human beings weave fear and hope into comets more than into any other celestial body? Planets move predictably, stars burn steadily, but comets erupt suddenly, igniting imagination as much as the sky. They are mirrors, reflecting not only sunlight but the inner landscapes of the cultures that behold them. To the Babylonians, they were warnings of kings undone. To the Chinese, they were dragons sweeping the heavens clean of dynasties. To the Maya, they were cyclical markers of death and rebirth. Each interpretation reveals less about the comet itself and more about the people who watched it. 3. I Atlas, though a scientific discovery, entered the same mirror. Astronomers described its orbit, its spectral chemistry, its fragmentation, yet still it stirred the language of myth. Media headlines called it a doomsday comet, despite knowing its path posed no threat. Amateur observers spoke of its ghostly glow as if it were alive. Even in an age of satellites and particle accelerators, the human heart reacted as it always had, with awe, with unease, with the need to assign meaning. The cultural mirror reflects both terror and longing. Comets remind us of fragility. Worlds can be ended by impact, empires undone by famine or flood, but they also suggest possibility. They may have seeded Earth with water and organics, carrying the sparks of life across cosmic gulfs. To some, that makes them destroyers. To others, bringers of Genesis. Myths simply made the polarity poetic. Atlas was no exception. It was received as data by science, but as symbol by culture. Its brief blaze coincided with a world in turmoil, and so it was spoken of as a sign, though reason knew better. This duality will never end. Each comet is both object and omen, fact and metaphor. In its light, we see not only chemistry but ourselves. Humanity cannot gaze upon a sudden fire in the sky without seeing both the threat of ruin and the promise of wonder. The story of Atlas may have ended in fragments, but science does not rest in silence. Across mountaintops and deserts, on satellites orbiting Earth, a vigilant network of instruments now waits for the next interstellar visitor. Pan-STARRS, with its wide eyes scanning the sky each night, continues to map moving lights against the static tapestry of stars. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory, soon to awaken in Chile, promises to survey the entire sky with unprecedented depth, its legacy survey of space and time poised to capture faint wanderers as they emerge from the darkness. Above the atmosphere, the James Webb Space Telescope peers into infrared wavelengths, able to dissect the chemistry of comets with exquisite sensitivity. Ground-based spectrographs monitor their volatile gases, while the Hubble Space Telescope still, from time to time, lends its clarity to observe fragmenting nuclei. Even particle colliders and laboratory simulations contribute, replicating the physics of sublimating ice and the fragile cohesion of dust grains. Together, these tools form a watchtower, a system not of priests and oracles, but of detectors and algorithms, waiting for the next interstellar trespasser to cross our sky. The search is not idle. Oumuamua, Borisov, Atlas, all arrived within a brief span, suggesting that the galaxy is crowded with such travelers. Each one is a messenger of another sun, bearing chemical memories and physical structures alien to our solar birth. Scientists hope the next will linger longer, brighter, intact enough to yield its secrets. Perhaps, in time, we may even send missions to intercept them, to touch matter that once orbited another star. Ancient watchers raised temples and monuments to track the heavens, hoping to understand the will of the gods. Modern science raises telescopes and satellites for the same reason, to read the signs, to measure the messengers, to prepare for revelations yet unseen. The instruments stand ready, guardians of a sky that still surprises, awaiting the next dragon, the next fire-tailed god, the next Atlas. Every age thinks itself new, yet comets remind us that our questions are ancient. Where once myths clothed them in dragons and omens, now science cloaks them in equations and isotopes. And yet the movement is not a rejection but a rebirth. The knowledge of the ancients, though bound in metaphor, is echoed in the laboratory. The fear that comets bring chaos finds reflection in impact craters and extinction events. The hope that they carry life resonates with discoveries of amino acids and water in their dust. What was once prophecy is now hypothesis. What was once omen is now data. 3i Atlas, fragile and fleeting, sits at this threshold. To Babylonian scribes, it would have been the fiery torch foretelling ruin. To Chinese astronomers, the dragon sweeping across the sky. To the Maya, a serpent of destruction and rebirth. And to us, it is a chemical messenger, its spectral glow bearing the fingerprint of a foreign star. The continuity is striking. We no longer say, the gods are angry, but we still say, the universe is speaking. The language has changed, the reverence has not. Astronomy, in its way, redeems the wisdom of ancient watchers. They were not wrong to treat comets as significant. They understood, without instruments, that these visitors were outsiders, unpredictable and transformative. Modern science validates their instinct by confirming that such bodies are indeed rare, dangerous, or profoundly important. Atlas was not divine, but it was extraordinary. Its brief appearance connected two traditions separated by millennia: myth that sought meaning and science that seeks truth. In its green fire, we glimpse the continuity of human wonder. Myth is reborn as science, and science inherits the poetry of myth. Atlas does not erase the dragon, the sword, or the god, it gives them new form, one that bridges the imagination of our ancestors with the instruments of our age. Yet beneath the poetry lies a darker undercurrent, the threat that interstellar wanderers pose to our certainty. Comets of our own system can strike, as history and geology attest. But what of those born beyond? An interstellar fragment, massive and unbound, could arrive with little warning. Its velocity, already high, would amplify its destructive power. Unlike local comets, which follow predictable returns, these trespassers come once and vanish, giving no second chances, no recurring patterns by which to prepare. 3. Atlas posed no such danger, its trajectory carrying it past Earth at a safe distance, but its very existence was unsettling. If 3 interstellar visitors could appear in just a few years, Oumuamua, Borisov, and Atlas, how many more pass unseen, too faint to detect? How many arrive, flare briefly, and depart without notice? For every one we capture in telescopes, there may be countless others drifting silently, crossing our orbital neighborhood with indifferent paths. This uncertainty gnaws at the edges of knowledge. It is one thing to map the orbits of thousands of asteroids, to survey the icy hosts of the Kuiper Belt. It is another to realize that objects from alien systems may appear without pattern, carrying with them both secrets and hazards. To ancient peoples, this fear took the form of omens, the gods sending destruction, heaven withdrawing its favor. For modern science, the fear takes another form, a statistical possibility, a low but undeniable chance that one day a larger interstellar body might cross paths with our world. Atlas itself left in fragments, but its lesson was sharp. The universe is not closed. The boundaries between systems are porous. What is out there can come here, suddenly and without warning. And in that truth lies both wonder and unease. Comets are not only poetry in the sky, they are reminders that certainty is fragile and that the cosmos can disrupt our patterns at any moment. There are few celestial bodies as innately poetic as comets. They are ice and dust, yet they trail fire. They are small, yet they command whole skies. They appear unannounced, burn with drama, and vanish without farewell. In this rhythm, they resemble stories, songs, even lives themselves. Comets are the poetry of the cosmos, written not with ink, but with orbits and light. 3. Atlas carried that poetry in every phase of its brief tale. Its approach was a verse of anticipation, faint yet growing. Its sudden brightening was a chorus, swelling with promise. Its fracture was tragedy, a stanza cut short, and its departure, a fading line across the void, left silence in its place. Science recorded its eccentricity, its spectral lines, its fragments dispersing, but mythology supplied the metaphors that gave those numbers emotional weight. Atlas was at once a comet, a dragon, a dying god, a messenger. To speak of comets as poetry is not to reject science, but to acknowledge that they bridge knowledge and meaning. The Babylonians inscribed fear into clay. The Chinese spoke of dragons, the Maya of serpents. Modern astronomers speak of hyperbolic paths and cyanogen. Each expression is a verse in the same long poem, humanity responding to sudden fire in the heavens. Atlas, coming from another star, extended that poem beyond Earth, making us part of a galactic chorus we are only beginning to hear. And perhaps that is the deepest resonance. Poetry reminds us that the universe is not merely mechanical but meaningful, that the coldness of equations does not erase the warmth of wonder. Atlas was a fragment of alien creation, yes, but also a line of cosmic poetry, glowing green in the night, reminding us that the cosmos writes with beauty as well as law. Its trail was verse, its fracture elegy, its silence, the unfinished line of a poem still being written among the stars. When the fragments of Atlas faded from view, the sky returned to its stillness. The fire was gone, the dragon slain, the god extinguished. What remained was silence, and silence is its own kind of message. For in that absence, humanity is left with reflection on what it means for our fragile world to be visited by matter from another sun, on what it means that the cosmos can still surprise us, on what it means that myth and science continue to intertwine. Atlas was never destined to stay. Its hyperbolic orbit condemned it to exile, a brief trespass through our system, before vanishing forever into the abyss. Yet in that brevity, it touched something eternal. The Babylonians would have called it a torch star. The Chinese would have named it a dragon. The Maya would have spoken of serpents of renewal. Astronomers spoke of eccentricity and fragmentation. All these languages converge on the same truth. A stranger appeared in the sky, burned brightly, then was gone. In its silence, questions endure. How many such visitors pass unseen? How many myths were born of their forgotten trails? What secrets of alien stars did Atlas carry, dissolved before we could measure them? And what will the next one reveal? The mystery deepens not with answers but with the acknowledgement that the universe is porous, that its fragments travel, that its stories overlap. And so the silence after the fire is not empty, it is contemplative. Humanity stands again in the oldest posture, eyes lifted, breath held, wondering. The myths remain, the science advances, the awe persists. Atlas has departed, but its meaning lingers, etched into memory like the ghost of a star. The cosmos has spoken in fragments, and we, as always, are left to listen. The fire is gone now. The fragments of Atlas have dissolved into the unlit spaces between stars, carried beyond the reach of any telescope, beyond the reach of memory itself. Yet the echo remains. It drifts not in the heavens but in us, in the questions we ask, in the myths we recall, in the quiet awe that lingers when the sky seems too vast to hold. Slowly, the pace of thought softens. The comet is no longer data or omen, but a whisper, a passing reminder that we too are wanderers, fragile and brief, moving through a universe that will not wait for us. The ancients looked upward and saw gods. We look upward and see equations. But the feeling is the same, the tremor of smallness before immensity, the recognition that beauty and terror are woven together in the same thread of light. Perhaps that is the true gift of Atlas. Not knowledge alone, not fear alone, but perspective. It reminds us that the cosmos is not ours, that its visitors do not ask our permission to appear. They come and they go, carrying their silence, and we are left with wonder. And in that wonder, there is a kind of peace. For if the universe can send us such fleeting poetry, if it can cross light years to paint the sky with fire, then perhaps our own fragility is not a flaw but a harmony. Like comets, we blaze for a moment, then fade. What matters is not how long we burn, but how deeply we illuminate the dark. The night sky is quiet again. Rest in that quiet. Let the silence close gently. The dragon has passed. The god has gone. The comet has burned, and the stars endure. Sweet dreams.